Kamala Harris's town hall on CNN yesterday was a complete unmitigated disaster. It was word salad central, and she failed to seal the deal with undecided voters. Oh, and by the way, that's not my opinion. That's the opinion of the commentators over at CNN. Just take a look at what Dana Bash had to say immediately after the town hall ended.
Well, I'll just tell you what I'm hearing from people who I have been talking to, and that is that if her goal was to close the deal, they're not sure she did that. And, you know, some people have asked, is she being held to a different standard? Maybe, but that's maybe the world that she's living in. And on the question of who she is, people are understanding that a little bit more, but what she will do, the question about her legislative priorities, name one, there wasn't one. You know, some more of her personality and her sort of character questions about your weaknesses or what mistakes did you make? Not necessarily the answers there.
The fact that she can't close the deal with undecided voters is a big deal because the election is right around the corner. The finish line is in sight. There is a limited amount of time for both campaigns to get those undecided voters into their camps, to build up their support before Election Day. But even worse for the Harris campaign is the fact that she may have actually cost herself support. So, in other words, instead of just failing to secure those undecided voters, she may have broken the number one rule in politics, which is do no harm. Take a look at this.
Republicans would take another hour of Kamala Harris. We'd just press play, let her keep going. We'd pay for another hour to let her keep not answering the questions. I think Anderson's asking her, well, why haven't you done it? You've been there for 4 years. Why have you done any of this? And the word salad answer she gave to that was just mind-boggling. I mean, it's blown up the internet, her answer to that question. I think the things that are troubling for people were her responses to, you know, Van said about what you're going to do to reduce costs when they asked her at the beginning. You know, we're hurting economically. She said, I'm going to prosecute corporations. Right? That's not going to lower costs. How are you going to make things better for me? I'm going to prosecute people. Trump bad is not a message that's going to get her elected. Trump bad message. I disagree with.
The Harris campaign only has themselves to blame for this disaster. You know, earlier in the year, they were keeping her locked up. They were shielding her from the press. They were essentially running the Biden basement campaign 2.0. So, you know, all pressure has been put on these very few media appearances she's made these last few weeks. And it's exactly what I predicted in August and September. You know, it's going to make these appearances, these limited town halls close to Election Day, even more high stakes. And the higher the risk, the higher the reward. But the inverse is also true. The higher the risk, you know, the higher the consequences. And the Harris campaign is finding that out the hard way. This is what you get, Democrats, when you don't have an open primary process. This is what you get when you backstab your candidate and you force a candidate down the electorate's throat. You find someone who's unqualified, you find someone who's undisciplined, unpracticed, and quite frankly, just isn't fit for the job. Now, one more clip before we actually get to the town hall. David Axelrod, a huge name in Democrat politics, finally admitted on the air that Kamala Harris is word salad central.
When she doesn't want to answer a question, her habit is to kind of go to word salad city. And she did that on a couple of answers. One was on Israel. Anderson asked a direct question, would you be stronger on Israel than Trump? And there was a 7-minute answer, but none of it related to the question he was asking.
So, yeah, he's 100% spot on with that. And for a Democrat to actually admit that their candidate is the queen of word salad, not exactly the look, not exactly the narrative you want in the final stretch of the election cycle. So obviously the Harris campaign is imploding. She has been her own stumbling block. And again, she and her campaign only have themselves to blame. So for me, this entire night, the worst part of the entire town hall was when Anderson Cooper asked her, is there a mistake you've ever made? And what would you learn from that mistake? And I think that's a question that anyone, even someone not running for president, should be able to answer. You should be able to answer that at just the most basic job interview. Whether it's at McDonald's, whether it's at a corporate entity as an accountant, I don't care. But that question is important because it shows that you have the capability to self-reflect and then to learn from your mistakes so you can be a better person tomorrow than you are today. And she couldn't even answer that.
Is there something you can point to in your life, political life or in your life in the last 4 years, that you think is a mistake that you have learned from?
I mean, I've made many mistakes, and they range from, if you've ever parented a child, you make lots of mistakes too. In my role as vice president, I mean, I've probably worked very hard at making sure that I am well versed on issues, and I think that is very important. It's a mistake not to be well versed on an issue and feel compelled to answer a question.
I mean, not only did she fail to show any humility, any retrospection, and fail to answer the question, of course, but she absolutely said nothing, and in fact, sort of damned herself in the process. I mean, she used the word probably. I've probably made mistakes. I've probably worked hard. What do you mean probably? It's either yes or no. Like, I probably brushed my teeth this morning. You want a kiss? I promise I have fresh breath. I probably brushed them. I probably have good hygiene. Someone who says they probably worked hard is someone who probably half-assed it. I'm just saying. That to me is what that sounds like. Also, she says she's well-versed on the issues. What issues? Like how to leave the southern border wide open while you're the border czar? Like, what issues are we talking about here? Probably worked hard, probably well-versed on the issues. And then she wants to bring up parenting, which, she has no children of her own, which no hate, no criticism on that. But when she married Doug, I believe his daughter was just, correct me if I'm wrong on the specific age, but I believe she was 15. And from what I recall, I believe Kamala was actually only involved like on the weekends. So it's not like she actually raised the child. So for her to be trying to reach out and empathize and build a relationship and rapport with parents out there is completely ridiculous and completely inauthentic. Now, one of the questions that she has been asked over and over again has been, what would you do differently from Joe Biden? She was asked that question on The View, where she famously face-planted, and she was asked that question again last night. And you would think someone in the campaign, for as scripted, as produced, as choreographed as this campaign is, you would think that someone would have rewritten an answer for her, had her memorize it, and be prepared to deliver it. But apparently, they're not taking that seriously at the campaign, and she completely flubbed what should have been a softball, slam dunk, home run answer.
Considering you have been in the position of vice president for the past 4 years under the Biden administration, how can we expect you to deviate from the direction of that administration compared to your own? How can we differentiate your policy and your beliefs from that of Biden's?
That's a great question, and thank you. Well, first of all, my administration will not be a continuation of the Biden administration. I bring to this role my own ideas and my own experience. I represent a new generation of leadership on a number of issues and believe that we have to actually take new approaches. For example, what we talked about in terms of housing. My experience that leads to that priority includes what I did to take on the big banks around the foreclosure crisis when I brought billions of dollars to homeowners that were the subject of predatory lending. I know what home ownership means to the American people, not to mention what it meant to my mother, who worked very hard and saved up so that by the time I was a teenager, she was able to buy our first home. I bring to it my experience actually taking care of my mother when she was sick, and it was, as it turned out, dying from cancer. And so I know what it means and have the experience of taking care of an elderly relative, and I have raised children. And so I bring to my priorities and will, as president, a new approach and a new idea, frankly, about what we need to do to deal with the sandwich generation.
Look, I am sorry that her mom died from cancer. I'm sorry that she had to take care of her during that time. I can't imagine going through that just on a personal human level. How terrible. But what in the world does that have to do with how you're going to be different from Joe Biden's administration? What she is doing there, whenever she can't answer a question, she tries to connect emotionally. Basically, look at me, I'm a victim, give me your sympathy. And when you give me your sympathy, give me your vote as well. That's what she's doing there. That's why she brought up her mom with cancer. Really. I mean, I know that sounds crass and cruel, but it's because she has no other answer to give. all of her answers when it comes to what would you do differently from Joe Biden is, I'm a different person. Well, no, duh, Sherlock. We can see you're a different person. First of all, we can see that you're a female, he's a male. Yes, those two genders still exist, thank goodness. But there's just absolutely no substance to that answer, and unfortunately, the rest of the night did not get any better. Another attendee at the town hall actually asked about the border. This was a huge topic for the night, and he asked about whether illegal migrants coming through the border are going to get benefits that are paid for by U.S. taxpayers. And Kamala's answer, well, it wasn't any better.
Regarding the rapid increase in the migrant population, how will you ensure that every immigrant is integrated into American society safely? What benefits and subsidies will you provide them with? And how long will these benefits and subsidies last for an individual? Most importantly, will the American citizens' taxes pay for these benefits and subsidies? And if so, how much money will be allocated?
Well, thank you, Jackson. Let's start with this. America's immigration system is broken and it needs to be fixed. And it's been broken for a long time. And part of what we need to do is always prioritize what we need to do to strengthen our border. I will tell you I'm the only person in this race among the two choices that voters have. I've personally prosecuted transnational criminal organizations.
Okay, so just to recap, the question, what will you do to fix the problem? Answer, there is a problem, and we must talk about the problem, and we must talk about what we must do to fix the problem that we all know there is a problem with. And by the way, I am the only person in this race who has prosecuted something tangentially related to this problem.
In the trafficking of guns, drugs, and human beings, I have spent a significant part of my career making sure that our border is secure and that we do not allow criminals in and we don't allow that kind of trafficking to happen and come into our country. And as my opponent has proven himself, he would prefer to run on the problem instead of fix the problem.
Actually, she's the one running on the problem instead of fixing the problem because, hello, Mrs. Vice President, you are currently in office right now. By the way, you are also the border czar, which conveniently the media is not talking about at all. Immigration, illegal immigration, went up under the Biden-Harris administration. They spiked dramatically in 2022, 2023. They've artificially come down this year, but that is still compared to historic highs in the last 2 years. And by the way, even though they're a little lower this year, they're still higher than any year under President Donald Trump. So there's that. Number two, I seem to remember this moment during the 2020 primaries. Oh yes, it was on MSNBC when you raised your hand and essentially signaled to the world that you would decriminalize border crossings.
Stage last night on the topic of decriminalization of the border. If you'd be so kind, raise your hand if you think it should be a civil offense rather than a crime to cross a border without documentation. Can we keep the hands up so we could see them?
I don't know if you noticed, but Joe Biden was like, I don't know if I should raise my hand for this. Jill, where are you? Like, where's my puppet master? Pull the string up. And then Kamala Harris, though, is there. Yeah. Comfortable, confident, solid. I will decriminalize, those crossings at the southern border. So there you have it. So that's why she doesn't want to talk about this issue. And then she actually admitted that her goal this entire time was amnesty. That's right. And so she wants to talk about the border bill that Trump, who, by the way, is a private citizen, was a private citizen when the bill failed, is currently a private citizen. She keeps wanting to blame Trump for that bill not passing Congress. Well, the reason it didn't pass, first of all, there were Democrats who voted against it. So it was bipartisan opposition. It wasn't just Republican opposition. It wasn't just MAGA opposition. It was bipartisan opposition. But the reason there was bipartisan opposition is number two, because the bill essentially guaranteed amnesty. And that was also a topic brought up during yesterday's town hall.
2022, 2023, there were record border crossings. Your administration took hundreds of executive actions. It didn't stem the flow. Numbers kept going up. Finally, in 2024, just in June, 3 weeks before the first presidential debate with Joe Biden, You institute executive actions that had a dramatic impact, really shut down people crossing over. Why didn't your administration do that in 2022, 2023?
First of all, you're exactly right, Anderson. And as of today, we have cut the flow of immigration by over half. In fact, the numbers I saw most recently, illegal immigration
But if
is
it was
low.
that
But hold
easy
on,
with
let me
that
finish.
executive action, why not do it in 2022, 2023?
Because we were working with Congress and hoping that actually we could have a long-term fix to the problem instead of a short-term fix.
You couldn't have done one and both at the same time?
Well, here's the thing. We have to understand that ultimately this problem is going to be fixed through congressional action.
A long-term fix, essentially meaning amnesty. There's just no other way to interpret that. Now, I will give kudos where kudos is due. I will say CNN has been surprisingly fair whenever it comes to having the candidates on their network this season. So I thought they were extremely fair during the Biden-Trump debate. I thought that Anderson Cooper last night did an incredible job actually pushing back. So there was a moment when he asked her about the border wall, and then he actually fact-checked her and then pushed her on her previous statements on the border wall. And again, kudos where kudos is due, because I did not expect this from Anderson Cooper.
Under Donald Trump, you criticized the wall more than 50 times. You called it stupid, useless, and a medieval vanity project. Is a border wall stupid?
Well, let's talk about Donald Trump and that border wall. So remember, Donald Trump said Mexico would pay for it? Come on, they didn't. How much of that wall did he build? I think the last number I saw was about 2%. And then when it came time for him to do a photo op, you know where he did it? In the part of the wall that President Obama built.
But you're agreeing.
Okay, let's stop there. First of all, she wants to criticize Trump for that. I don't know whether or not that's true, but what I do know for a fact is true is that when Kamala Harris went to the border for her photo op with the Border Patrol, she went to the part of the wall that Donald Trump built. So really rich right there coming from her. Just absolutely... I love whenever she laughs, because she is the funniest person she knows. And I love when she laughs and no one else in the audience is laughing with her. It's just like, I feel like minus her laugh, you could hear a pin drop in the room. I almost want someone to recreate and re-edit these videos with her laughing, almost as if, you know, she's trying to encourage the audience to laugh, to break the wall and be like, hey, it's okay to laugh with me. And instead it's just crickets. They're just standing there like, or sitting there like, well, this is awkward. You're not actually answering our questions. Also, she lied about Mexico paying for the wall. So Trump was always very clear. When he said Mexico would pay for the wall, a lot of people interpreted that to be that, he was going to go to Mexico and they were going to write him this huge giant check, similar to when you win the lottery and he would stand there with the president of Mexico with this giant check with the amount and then border wall in the memo. No, that was never what was going to happen. The way Mexico is paying for the wall is through tariffs and other issues where the trade imbalances actually work out. And Trump, of course, has been very strong on trade. And so even that was misrepresented by Kamala.
A bill that would earmark $650 million to continue building that wall.
I pledge that I am going to bring forward that bipartisan bill to further strengthen and secure our border. Yes, I am. And I'm going to work across the aisle to pass a comprehensive bill that deals with a broken immigration system. I think Jackson's question, part of it was to acknowledge that America has always had migration, but there needs to be a legal process for it. People have to earn it. And that's the point that I think is the most important point that can be made, which is we need a president who is grounded in common sense and practical outcomes. Like, let's just fix this thing. Let's just fix it. Why is there any ideological perspective on this? Let's just fix the problem.
To fix the problem, you're doing this compromise bill. It does call for $650 million that was earmarked under Trump to actually still go to build the wall.
I am not afraid of good ideas where they occur.
So you don't think it's stupid anymore?
I think what he did and how he did it did not make much sense, because he actually didn't do much of anything. I just talked about that wall, right? We just talked about it. He didn't actually do much of anything.
But you do want to build some wall.
I want to strengthen our border.
She can't even answer that question. Again, if you can't answer the question directly, and then you say another true statement like "I want to strengthen the border," but she doesn't answer the question about the wall, that is usually an indication of lying or at least dishonesty and not wanting to actually dive deeper into that issue. Now, there is another horrible instance of word salad, as if all of that wasn't enough, where she talks about what hasn't been done that has to be done that we need to do because we have to do it because we haven't done it and it needs to be done.
Some voters, though, might ask, you've been in the White House for 4 years, you were vice president, not the president, but why wasn't any of that done for the last 4 years?
Well, there was a lot that was done, but there's more to do, Anderson. And I'm pointing out things that need to be done, that haven't been done, but need to be done.
It's like the movie Inception, or it's like when you go into a horror house, haunted house, or like not the haunted houses, like not the scary ones, but like the clown houses. You know what I mean? And they have the mirror room, and it's like, it's almost like her brain is that mirror room. Like this idea pops up, has to be done, hasn't been done, so we need to do it because we haven't done it, but it needs to be done. I mean, I swear that's how this word salad gets made. It's this mirror room, this mirror maze inside her brain. I would love to be inside it. Now, one of the most dangerous pieces of Kamala Harris's pitch to the American people is really how radical she is. And her campaign, I'll give her credit, campaign, they've done a good job of really hiding how radical she is. They've been trying to soften her image some, which unfortunately I do think has been effective, but fortunately, I think the American people are smarter than that. And the more she does these town halls, the more she does these interviews, I think the more she exposes how radical, or more importantly, how inauthentic she is, which really exposes the radical nature of everything. But here she is admitting that she wants to get rid of the filibuster.
Let me ask you, you've talked about codifying Roe v. Wade. That would obviously require 60 votes in the Senate, a majority of the House. That's a big leap. We don't have that yet. If that's not possible to codify it in the House, what do you do?
I think we need to take a look at the filibuster, to be honest with you.
Ooh. And that is the thing. The filibuster, if the Democrats get rid of that, that wouldn't just be for abortion. That could be used for anything, such as, oh, I don't know, packing the Supreme Court. Oh, I don't know, amnesty for tens of millions of illegal immigrants who crossed the southern border, including, by the way, many of whom we now know are criminals, violent criminals, sexual offenders, murderers. I mean, okay, for people who aren't familiar, because I know I have a lot of younger viewers, and then I know I have a lot of people who aren't, political junkies. The filibuster essentially is this process where legislation to pass the Senate needs a 60-vote minimum threshold to pass. And so to get rid of that would mean it would just be a simple majority, 50 plus 1. So you could even get a 50-50 tie in the Senate, but you know what? The vice president presides over the Senate, so the vice president, who is currently Kamala Harris, could be that tie-breaking vote. Now, the filibuster, the reason it is so important is because we live in a divisive time right now. The pendulum can swing back and forth. And so by requiring a minimum of 60 votes to pass legislation through the Senate, that means you have to have broad bipartisan consensus. Both Democrats and Republicans have to agree. People from California have to agree with people in Arkansas, have to agree with people in Michigan, have to agree with people in Florida, have to agree with people in New York. I mean, 60%, that's nearly 2/3. So that means, yes, it may be slower to pass legislation, but that means we're not going to get radical legislation passed under one president and then a completely radical opposite piece of legislation passed with the following president. The filibuster ensures that broad consensus is required, and it ensures that we are making progress, but it's progress that we can all agree on. Really, is what it's for. And by wanting to eliminate it, Kamala Harris is really signaling to the people, I want to strong arm the American people. I want a simple majority. I want mob rule. Even when, you just take a look at polling data and how fickle public opinion is. Do you really want to pass legislation right now? Do you really want to pass a law that could be on the books for decades, centuries, based on, just the fluctuations in public sentiment? Or do you want to pass a law where everyone is on the same page and the vast majority of people agree? Because there's a huge difference between 2/3 majority versus just a simple majority. Just my take on it. Now, Kamala Harris was asked, finally, another hard-hitting question about the Middle East, and she totally bombed that one. That was not scripted and pun not intended.
The question is, as president, what would you do to ensure not another Palestinian dies due to bombs being funded by U.S. tax dollars?
So I will say, and I think this is to your point, far too many innocent Palestinian civilians have been killed. It's unconscionable. And we are now.
But she doesn't mention the Israelis who have been killed. It's only one side. Sympathy and empathy for one side here.
Now at a place where, with Sinwar's death, I do believe we have an opportunity to end this war, bring the hostages home, bring relief.
They haven't done that.
To the Palestinian people. And
don't forget, it was the Biden-Harris administration who built that pier. What was it? Several millions, tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars. And within 2 weeks, it collapsed. It failed. I mean, talk about a waste of taxpayer money.
Work toward a two-state solution where Israel and the Palestinians in equal measure have security, where the Palestinian people have dignity, self-determination, and the safety that they so rightly deserve.
Here's a hint. Here's a news flash for Kamala Harris. There is a certain group of people who do not want a two-state solution. I mean, that has been on the books. That has been proposed for years and has always been rejected by a certain group of people. And so it's funny that now she's talking about it, but she has to, because she knows that she's bleeding support, not just among minorities, obviously, but I saw a poll recently, by the way, where now more Muslims are planning on voting for Trump than Kamala Harris. Who would have ever thought of that? Especially after 9/11. I get 9/11 was over 20 years ago at this point, but the fact that the majority of Muslims are now voting for a Republican candidate, I mean, if you were paying attention to politics in the aftermath of 2001, big deal. Big deal. But as always, that is just my analysis, my commentary. That is what's going on today from my point of view, and I would love to hear from you. What do you think the repercussions of this town hall will be? Do you think the Harris campaign will try to keep her hidden for the rest of the campaign? I know, she has a rally in Texas tomorrow, I believe, with Beyonce. But I don't know what else is on the calendar, if anything else is planned. Do you think after this, they're going to put her out there more to try to scratch back some of their losses, to try to course correct? Or do you think they're just going to finish out the campaign, essentially doing the Biden basement 2.0 strategy to avoid more disasters, more word salad just like this? Let me know your predictions in the comments below. If you haven't already, please be sure to give me a thumbs up. I know it's a simple thing to ask, but it really does help me in the algorithm to reach more viewers like you. Be sure to smash that subscribe button and to check out one of these videos.